I told you I started keto. We were just talking about it.
Today.
Kind
Did
of.
the lab work?
I gotta do a lab work still. No.
Okay, you started it before.
So I kind of started. I had keto for breakfast, and now we'll go to dinner after, and I need your help because I need to order keto. So you're just gonna be like, okay, just hit 3 steaks.
Yeah, or a burger, hold the bun.
Do they have keto mayonnaise?
Yeah, you could get it. It would just be like sugar free. Because mayonnaise is mostly just fat anyway.
Ah, there's no carbs.
Then not it has to add in sugar.
It's still weird getting used to eating lots of fats is okay. I was explaining.
Okay, when you don't have the sugars, because fat and sugar are two sources of fuel. So when you have both of them,
Uh-huh.
you're going to grow.
Yeah, I was telling Fabiano about. He's really interested in that keto. He's like bigger than he's ever been right now, like fat.
Oh,
He feels bad. He doesn't. Sorry about how you. But he was like, yeah, I need to like start lifting again and getting serious about it. And I was like, dude, do keto with me. I was like, it's gonna take me 2 weeks to kind of get started, and like maybe just for breakfast I'll do keto, and then slowly figure out what I can eat. Because at some point I'll get desperate one day and I'm like, fuck, I didn't plan it. So now I'm like, fuck it, McDonald's. Let's go.
if you get McDonald's, you can order all of those cheeseburgers without the bun
Oh God,
and no fries.
no, no fries.
No, it's just fried carbohydrates. French fries?
And so everyone online is talking about, well, make sure when you do keto, do clean keto.
Yes.
They're basically saying don't do that, even though that is effective, which is crazy.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you have to choose, if you're gonna have pasta or, something like that, then yeah, I would still get McDonald's with no bun
Right.
on the burgers.
Still better than I was watching Tyson Fury. He's a boxer. And his son's a boxer now, but he did keto, and he was like, yeah, but I did a dirty keto, and they showed what he was eating. And it's like, yeah, but I still lost 30 pounds. And I was like, what is keto?
Yeah. You put your body in ketosis and you're using fat as fuel. The ketones, and your body creates ketones, actually prefers it to glucose. So your body creates glucose if it needs it. Gluconeogenesis.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's amazing. I think we've all been lied to.
I mean, we were talking about this before. The main motivation is, well, one, is it they want to keep us unhealthy, or is it mass food production? Like, do they want to keep us unhealthy, so we have to take the medicines? And like, can you speak about this? Are you allowed to?
When you say they, I think every country has a significant source of GDP, and every country has a power structure and primary revenue.
Mhm.
And I think that big food and big pharma are in charge of a lot of things because they hold a multi-trillion-dollar empire. So
Things like information to the public.
yes. So in countries that are not governed by autocratic dictator-like figures, and where we have free choice, there's more that operates on coercion and manipulation because you have to get people to choose something rather than force them to have something. So
And that makes sense. But then they feel good because they're free to choose the only option effectively based on bad information.
well, you might say that. I guess that's how I would think about it. But it benefits certain people for other people to have obesity related illnesses.
Uh-huh.
It benefits drug companies and big food and big pharma.
So are they tied? That's what I was going to ask you. So the big pharma is tied in with the food. It's all one thing.
I mean, I don't know, but you might ask yourself, why is it the FDA? Why is Food and Drug one organization?
What the?
I mean, it's a fair question.
It is.
So I don't have any direct accusations, but I have a lot of questions. Trace it back, follow the money trail. There's a lot more ingredients allowed in foods here than there is in European countries.
Because there's really not those ingredients in the food, right? There's just
Not the same. I mean, we allow a lot more ingredients in the food, but they also have a socialized medical system. So
So the
Is it
government
really,
has an incentive to not spend money on health.
is it really beneficial to have that many people sick?
It's not.
So, right.
That's crazy. That's interesting. Because I always saw, well, you always hear socialism that. So you pay a lot of taxes, pay a lot of taxes. But I never thought that if you look at the incentives of the government to take care of the people, they are incentivized to keep the people healthy if they're the ones having to pay for it more, even though the people paid for more taxes.
Yeah. And yeah, those, they're not necessarily socialist countries, but they have socialized, right, medical system. So, but I mean, I don't think that'll ever happen legitimately so in the United States. Well, they tried Obamacare and then, I got overturned because,
It was illegal.
well, yeah, I mean, you can't really force people and it has to go through Congress. And
They skipped all that, right? It literally
as
violated.
far as I know, I mean, I think that's basically, you can get Obamacare, but it's sort of like taking the engine out of a car. So it's still there, but nobody's actually forced to use it. So,
Right.
I mean, but I don't think I don't know that we'd ever have actually a socialized medical system in this country because people are too overweight already and unhealthy. A lot of those countries that had those systems were already healthy. It's not like those systems created people to be more healthy. People were healthier first before those systems were placed in other
Food's
nations.
better, more fun. The overall cultural way of life, work.
Biking, yeah.
Do you read? Are you still reading? Have you read any books?
I like listening to books.
What do you listen
Audible.
to?
The last one I listened to was actually two. I listened to one called At Your Best, that by Carrie Newhoff, which is great. It's on time management and efficiency and how to allocate time throughout your day, based on learning where your energy centers are. He breaks it up to green, yellow, and red
Oh,
zones.
Sue Carey.
Yeah,
Poor
it's
guy. Poor guy. One of those names.
it's really cool. So he's like, where's your green zone, right? Are you a morning person? Are you evening person? If you're, your green zone, you shouldn't be taking out the trash. And your green zone, that's a mindless activity. That's a red zone activity. Along with answering a simple email. So, it's
So categorize all your tasks, find out where your zones are, and then
yes,
switch.
exercise you do in the yellow zone. You need energy, but you don't need a lot of mental
You don't need
energy for
cognitive.
that. Right. So, and you may have like 4 hours a day, maybe 6 hours. So you want to be doing all your green zone tasks in the green zone. So you have something really important to work on that requires a lot of attention and focus. That's a green zone.
So I gotta read.
It can take 2, 3, 4 times the amount of time if you do one of those tasks in the red zone.
Imagine how it's just that you're killing your day, and if you move that around, all of a sudden you have extra hours.
A couple of hours. Yeah. So I think about it in terms of students, trying to do term papers at midnight. How much time, if they're not in their green zone at midnight, they may be spending hours more on what's a less quality.
But like an extreme example, let's try to do a math problem at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's not going to happen.
Right.
Your brain won't function. Have you heard of Dan Martell by Back Your Time?
Yes. Yeah.
I read like halfway through his book.
And
He talks about, and then I got sunburned, and one of the things he talks about is he teaches people how to calculate an hourly rate for their time,
okay.
which is interesting. Yeah, I don't remember what the formula was. It was different for everyone depending on your life scenario, but that premise was the same. Just be more efficient.
Yeah.
That's like Tim Ferriss. So it was like 15 years old, 4-hour work week.
Right.
I hate the title. I hate people like, I'm trying to work 4 hours a week. It's like, okay, buddy,
4 hours of it.
I'm gonna crush you.
It would be interesting with keto because you get, at least as I've experienced it, you get time because you have to sleep less and your cognitive functioning goes through the roof. Like after several months, you can see there's replication of mitochondria in your brain, your energy centers. So
A couple months.
yeah, several months. So it's really interesting. I think they quadruple after several months.
And that just means you can focus more and longer, or you absorb and retain more. What does that mean?
all of the above, as I've
It's
experienced.
superhuman power. It's just
Well, they just described it like that. It's completely different than before, and you don't really realize, wow, I didn't realize that I felt like garbage before until you don't. So there's a huge contrast effect when you get up and you're like, I only slept 6 hours. Oh, that's all I needed. I didn't even need an alarm.
It's kind of, so it's funny you say that because last time I slept like really good was maybe like a week ago. For some reason, it was a random night. I just slept good. Maybe it was a month ago, but whenever it was. And since I had a son, 2-year-old, since he came, I forgot what it's like to like sleep whenever you want, go to bed whenever you want, wake up whenever you want, not wake up 8 times in the middle of the night. But it's funny because after I had that night sleep, I felt so good in the morning. I was like, fuck, this is what I've been missing. Like, I'm like, when people were talking to me, I'm not like, huh? No, my brain was working and I was like happy to be alive. And like, I was like, damn, sleep is huge. Like, sleeping good is huge.
And I really think it's underestimated in this country, and people don't realize, especially towards the end of your sleep window, that's when, you're presumably getting more REM sleep. But that's your REM's like your first aid, mental and emotional first aid. If you had a hard day, you had an anxious day, then you go to sleep and you're like, oh, why am I awake at 3 o'clock in the morning? You get disrupted REM sleep. You wake up the next day. Why am I agitated? It seems like I'm more anxious. You didn't have your emotional, mental first aid. So you need that recovery. The body repairs, physical, like you worked out, right? More towards the beginning of your sleep cycle. So you fall into a deep sleep and then your body can physically repair.
That makes sense.
End of your sleep cycle, you need more. That's mental and emotional. So if you just lob off, only get 1 or 2 hours, less of sleep, it's a huge deal.
Because you're fucking yourself mentally.
And emotionally. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense because you hear people take a power nap and you sleep for 20 minutes, you feel great, or like physically you feel good.
Right.
That's wild. So I've been going to bed at like around 11, but I wake up at 6 every day now. Mm-hmm. So Santino's out of town. But I still was like, I'm still going to stay on the same schedule. So I stay on the same schedule. And you're right about time. Like all of a sudden you're like, oh, I have like a lot of more time in the day, even an extra hour a day. You're getting hundreds of hours a year extra. And now you have to do something with it. You have to be intentional. But I started doing computer work at like 7:15, 7:30 every morning. That's when I start, as opposed to like
maybe that's your friend zone.
It's just, I feel some people say, oh, do journaling and meditation in the morning. Like I go by the beach, I get a coffee and I'm there for like 15 minutes. I look at the ocean and then I'm like, I feel better working immediately for 3 hours and then taking a break and starting work right away, kind of get the momentum going.
It makes sense. Yeah. But all the energy's already there. Wow. You go to the beach every morning. That's like, do you like Florida?
So I don't go, let me specify that. I look at the ocean from the sidewalk. So I don't want to get sandy.
Yeah, but you still get the salt air.
I like Florida. Florida. You know what I don't like? What? Not Florida. Yeah, so
that's fair. What's the best thing about Florida?
It's so close to the States.
What?
That's the best thing.
It's the North Caribbean.
It's literally, we're not in the US. I mean, we didn't do the whole pandemic here. I remember doing, I gotta delete this shit because stupid fuckers at YouTube are gonna like ban the videos.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah. Marriage is better off for the woman and it's a losing proposition for men.
So what we see in industrialized nations is the exact opposite in terms of research. We see that marriages tends to be a benefit for men in terms of health and money. Men who are married live longer and they don't make as many financial risky decisions when they're married because their wife is not okay with that.
It's not okay. Thinking about their kids and things like that.
Yeah. So, and marriage secures consistent supply of sex for men who keep their marriage not on the rocks, we should say.
Yeah, of course.
And most men don't have they don't have ready access to sex. Well, the overwhelming majority of men cannot just go out and have multiple sexual partners. They don't have access to that because women are more selective. And in many instances, they're not going to say yes.
So what about the minority of men, the small group? They have unlimited access to sex, I guess, but you're still saying, yeah, maybe not the sex thing is why marriage is good for them, but the money and the health thing still apply to them. Or even
Yeah,
the sex thing, not getting a disease, not getting.
there's that. And there's also, I would say, depending on attachment styles, not just values, not every, even though men may be more likely to want all of that sexual variety, not every man is actually going to be okay with that, even if he has access to it. So there are some men who are like, well, I've done that, but actually I prefer sex when there's an emotional connection,
Uh-huh.
and they stop doing where there's just physical. So I've seen that.
If a man doesn't go through that, is there something wrong with him? It's just
If
like,
he doesn't go through what?
well, he goes through a stage, he sleeps around a lot. What if he just keeps doing that though his whole life? Is there some type of trauma that he never dealt with? I mean, because I feel like it's the natural evolution of a man where he realizes, okay, there's something bigger in life. There's something better than just stimulating my nerve endings.
So I would say, instead of saying there's something wrong with him, I would say it's
It's
probably
unhealthy. What's unhealthy?
no, I'd say reflective of an attachment style, right? So if you're doing that, if the guy's doing that throughout the life cycle, it's really hard to say he has a secure attachment. It's more than likely avoidant attachment. So it's a reflection of not only what's going on, but what's not going on. So if he's doing that, is he even able or capable
Can't keep.
of, right,
We
maintaining
talked about this before, and you brought up Matt Damon in Good Will Hunting. It's a perfect example of that avoidance attachment. Anytime, because he was an orphan, and anytime someone gets close to him, like he meets this really whatever that chick.
girl he's interested in?
Yeah, and then
He runs.
he kills it. He runs.
Right.
That's wild.
Right. And so he's had other sex partners, and came across like everything was okay and he was really confident. But then when it came to emotional intimacy, he was done. So, I mean, I think the trauma of whatever happened to create that is underestimated in men, because we just look at it and say, oh, he's just being a guy. Well, what does it mean to be a guy then? Like, because not all guys do that. So, it's about half the population that has some form of insecure attachment. And so for trauma, I would use that term loosely. It's not just what happened to you, it's what didn't happen to you. What didn't happen in your parental attachment. So you didn't come out with a secure attachment. What didn't happen?
I know someone relationships. Know a guy like that.
What? Really?
I like talking about him.
Well, it can be something as simple as parents who aren't ready to have children.
What the fuck?
Well, and it can be inconsistent parenting, parental emotional attention going every other direction, parental investment being more involved in personal goals, financial goals, education goals, while they're having, multiple kids. Is there enough to go around? Is there enough attention, emotional attention to go around? And do they have secure attachments, or do they have unresolved trauma and they're not providing certain needs for their kids because they don't have the resources themselves to do that? So I think it's intergenerational largely until you intervene. And then when you intervene, maybe you don't perpetuate whatever it is. Maybe.
So it's interesting. I asked you this because I went to therapy for almost a year. And then I did couples counseling. And I'm like, wow, I wish I would have done this 10 or 15 years ago. Just to learn about yourself, even as a teenager. Doesn't mean anything had to happen. You can just learn about your styles.
Personal growth tool.
Yeah, personal growth tool. So, but now that I am a superior human, because I've done therapy, tens of thousands of dollars. No, now that some of my friends now, I have to be careful because I kind of judge them now because I'm like, you're an idiot. I'm like, I used to be like you, or now I can recognize shit. Then I'm like, wow, you're fucked up, bro. Or you're immature, you haven't grown. Or like, for example, anytime I meet a guy who, let's just say, I think you agree, that's like 35 years old, getting close to 40, and he hasn't been divorced, or he's never had a kid, or never even like took a shot. I'm always like, That's a red flag to me for a guy.
Mm.
I'm like, why hasn't he like what? And I have a few friends like that now, and they're still going out and drinking every night, and they're still like doing what they were doing when they were
Are
20.
they able to get a girlfriend?
That's a good question. They're not. They have one of them has he's somewhat attractive, but he has money, so that could replace that. If you want that type of girlfriend. The other guy is really good looking. Um,
Well, he's good looking, but is there anything
that's what I'm saying. Exactly. Well, that's my point.
else or
That's my point. That's my point. I mean, don't you think by the time a guy is in his mid to late 30s, like I get men and women have different paths. Like there's this narrative, maybe this is a culture narrative, where a guy has to slay a dragon before he can become a man.
Huh.
That metaphor.
Okay.
The metaphor of like build a company or do something, climb the mountain, go on the journey, go on the vision quest.
Mm-hmm.
Like the rite of passage, all these cultures but they're 13 or 14. They send the kid out on a rite of passage and they have to come back with a tiger's tooth.
Okay.
Now you're a man. They have to go through that journey.
Okay.
But now when I realize I stop hanging around with some friends now because I'm like, bro, what are you doing? Like, and they don't seem to like really be looking for a long-term relationship. That's the thing. So I'm just like, one of them said, well, I'm really focused on work and career. And I'm like, okay, I get that. But at what point, like, is there some trauma or something behind these type of guys?
I don't know if it's trauma. I mean, it might be. It also just might be a skill set that's not there.
That's the thing when you said it's not a trauma, it's something missing.
Well, yeah, and they maybe are more introverted or less assertive, or, you also have to remember that women are more selective in industrialized countries like the United States. Women are making choices. They don't need relationships in the same way as maybe they did in the 50s when they weren't working.
Right.
Or they were working less.
They can leave because they're working.
They have a paycheck. Okay. So their status, because their status has changed, so is what they're attracted to.
Wow.
And so, you're going to see women who are kind of inadvertently raising the bar. And well, I'm not really attracted to that guy, attracted to the higher status guy, but he's not necessarily anywhere to be found, so I'm not going to take that guy. It might just be the participant pool. It might just be that there are fewer women interested in those men because maybe they match them now on status or are higher than them on.
So do women have higher standards now, or do they have different standards now?
I don't know if the standards have changed. I think the instincts are the same, and because women tend to be attracted to men of the same or higher status. Now that women have higher status,
when you're saying
more men
financial status,
them.
financial power,
financial,
power.
social, yeah. And so, those are things to consider. Where if women were lower in status before, there was a lot more people above them, and that was attractive. That's fine. It's attractive if you do this job and make more money than me. But now that I do this job up here, I'm only attracted to these guys up here now.
Interesting. So biologically, the same thing's going on, but culture changed. Basically, culture priced out a lot of guys. And maybe they could have.
I think that's a fair way to.
The American culture.
Yes.
Is that
that's how I would think about it.
That's fucking crazy.
Yeah, because there's so many more women now with a paycheck, so they're more. Women are already more selective with partner relationships.
But then also, women are also willing to trade off much more than men. For example, let's say there's a guy, a woman who's high status, she's making a lot of money, and she meets a guy that makes half of her income. But this guy is, let's say, he's super good looking, and he's a killer in the sack, and he emotionally knows himself, and he really wants to be married with that woman. And he's going to provide for all of her needs. One is which is not financial, but he wants to provide for her. Will that woman will she be like, well, I can give up him making the money because he's still leading everything else. He's not making the money, but he's still leading the finances.
If he's leading, then I think that's a different story.
Uh,
The question is, how is he doing that? And is he doing it sufficiently enough?
uh
Is there something that can possibly happen in terms of respect?
Leading isn't necessarily just because you're making a lot of money doesn't mean you're leading the woman in the family.
Right.
So there's something else. That's just, I look at it like the water's flowing into the family, money's coming into the family. But then the leader is going to say, okay, this is what happens with the money. We need to allocate this, or kind of they spearhead the operation.
Well, the question is, will he actually do that if
Right.
he's making less money, and will she let him do that? So, or does that stifle his assertiveness? So it can be problematic.
So in order for women to make more money, do they have to adopt any masculine traits and kind of lose some feminine traits? Or does it depend on the field also? Or
I don't know if it's more, I think those traits get activated, and that's more likely to happen in the setting
competition?
where she doesn't have a masculine partner. So it's almost like, let's say if it's a single woman, she may be taking on more masculine traits at the time because those are necessary for survival. She's playing both
Right.
roles.
She's playing
I'm
both
provider
roles.
and protector in my own home because I'm the only one here.
I need to survive, so I need to be more competitive. So I'm going to I need to make more money out.
And I don't know that it's that calculated or conscious. And
No,
it's automatic. And then when a male comes along to lead her, will bring out that feminine energy. And some of those qualities will, in some instances, die out. I've seen women who swear by highly feminist characteristics. I'm never going to get married. I don't believe in marriage. I don't believe in this, that, and the other. And then when a male comes along that she trusts and is assertive enough to lead her, all of that ideology goes out the window.
And biology is like, okay, enough with the culture.
Biology wins.
Biology
Nature
wins.
wins. And that's a huge contention today for people claiming that everything's socialized. You know, people weren't sitting around in the Paleolithic period and deciding on sex roles. Women should do this, men should do this. You know, if you want to talk about socialization, you cannot eliminate biology. Women were food supply. They were breastfeeding. So they came to stay at home. It makes sense based on their biology. Males cannot breastfeed. So, and males tend to be larger and stronger. So
They're going to go hunt.
right. And so those things are not necessarily socialized at all. They're evolved.
And yeah, and they don't just disappear in 10 years or 2 elections.
They're not choice. They're not based on choice.
Interesting. Because it is interesting whenever you see same-sex couples together, there's always a man version and a woman version. There's always a joke when you see 2 guys together. They're like, well, who's the man in the relationship? Who's the woman in the relationship? Even like gay dudes, homosexuals, they know who's the woman. The point is, even in that context where it's homosexual relations, there's always biology still goes in and says who's going to be the masculine version and who's going to be the feminine version.
Well, who has more testosterone?
Yeah, but you never see like, I've never seen. I don't see a lot of gay. I don't hang out with a lot of gay dudes, but I've never seen 2 gay dudes and they're both the dude. You know,
okay,
or they're both the chick. When I mean chick, everyone knows what I'm talking about. I don't know how to articulate this. You know,
masculine and feminine roles.
Masculine and feminine roles, they still exist,
right?
Even in same sex. And that's
fair. I mean,
doesn't that kind of like, boom, there you go. It's still they still exist. They're not just, they don't go away just because of same sex.
Right. So, right. Well, I mean, I'm sure it's different for every same-sex couple, but I mean, surely there's one with more or less testosterone or more or less estrogen. And so the world largely runs on hormones, I think. I don't know how complicated it actually is. I think
it's pretty straightforward.
Human nature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And biology.
If you look, I think if you're socio-biological perspective would say there's different things that you can condition, but you can't condition away nature.
Biologically, who's responsible for cleaning the house? It's kind of a weird. I don't know. This is like.
I mean, if you're talking about domestic duties, that would largely be women.
You realize you're going to get a lot of hate Just so interesting. I agree. And the reason is I really think when it comes down to it, we all agree, even people that say they disagree. Because if you walk into someone's house and it's a mess, let's say if someone invites you over for dinner, it's a mess. We're all thinking like, no one's like, man, this guy doesn't clean the house. Everyone's thinking the woman is not cleaning the house. It's a married couple, or switch the roles. If you saw a family sleeping under a bridge, there's a homeless family, kids, husband and wife, and you see them sleeping under a bridge, I always want to do this experiment. How many people are going to be like, why doesn't that guy go get a job and work and take care of his family? Or are they going to say, why doesn't the woman go get a job and take care of her family?
So, and then the socialized argument for that would be we've been socialized or conditioned to believe that those roles are divided that way. And I would say evolution came first.
Yeah, and going back to cleaning the house, it's just women can make a home. If the guy provides a house, the woman makes it a home. And it's because women by nature, let's just go to biology, women have kids. So before they have a kid, they nest and get ready for the kid. They make an environment for the kid so it's comfortable. Women are so focused on emotions, so they want the kid to be comfortable. What does the guy worry about? A guy's not worried about necessarily the kid being comfortable. More so, the first thing the guy's worried about is kid being safe. That's all I think about with my son. I tell my wife all the time, we'll kind of talk about different things, and she'll be like, Santino, I'm doing this. He's more comfortable. He's not comfortable that way. And I'm like, yeah, but it's not safe. I literally push his comfort to the side because I'm like, he can worry about his comfort when he's older. I'm going to keep him alive. But she's focused on comfort and emotions. So now I'll apply that to the house cleaning. And it just seems like that's more of a comfort type of emotional thing and less practical in a sense.
How about for single males?
So single males, interesting. So when I lived alone for like 5 years, you even told me I had to clean this house.
I mean, you really did.
I mean,
Yeah.
like fucking like crazy clean. Not even just for a guy. I was like, what the hell? So I don't know why. Maybe I was stress clean. Or I just like.
You would get that, honestly.
What?
Stress clean.
Yeah.
Inherited.
Oh, yeah. Who knows if this is right? If you go to a single guy's house, you expect it to be a lot dirtier than going into a woman's house or a woman's bathroom. Although I have been in some nasty women's bathrooms.
Yeah, I think, yeah. And so there would be an argument for, you're socialized to believe that. You're conditioned to believe that. I don't know if that's a good argument. Mostly because people don't provide sufficient evidence for it. There's plenty of evidence for evolutionary psychology. And so when people talk about socialization and social constructivism and everything is relative, a lot of times that group doesn't even demand evidence. Like, say the truth is relative. We don't have to use the scientific method to provide evidence. Evidence is relative.
Jeez.
And so, that's really hard. It's almost like, okay, well, what kind of debate can we have with that? If everything is relative and
there's no truth, we can't even know truth.
The evidence is relative and we have trouble citing the evidence because there's going to be a problem with who decides what evidence is and who provided the scientific method and who discovered it. And it must not be correct because it was one single group of people. And so the scientific method doesn't represent everybody because there was a small minority of people who decided what the scientific method was. So I don't know if we can actually, I don't know if we can actually use that.
We can't use that data.
So my question around that is, if it was one group of people, small group of people who didn't represent everybody, who found out that 2 + 2 = 4 across every culture and language, this many plus this many equals this many, is that not true? Or we have to look at people's identity? Do we have to factor in people's identity? when it comes to deciding a structure for evaluating evidence.
So you believe in objective truth?
I think that there are truths that are more objective, and I think that there are perceptions that are more valid. Not to say that there's feelings that are more or less valid, but when you're talking about things that are not true or that are true, I think it's more of a spectrum.
Like use a toothless example. That would be an objective truth. There's that's true whether we agree with it or not, or it's true whether humans even exist or not.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, therefore I am. Right? So we have Descartes and all different philosophers coming up with, well, do I even exist? Well, I think, therefore I am. So I do exist because I think. My own thinking justifies my existence. Right? So, yeah, so it can be you can get into all sorts of contentions around even having debate.
Wow.
If your debating party doesn't recognize evidence.
I feel like throughout history, has this, I feel like we've lived this before though. Haven't we already gone through like a phase of relativism and it just doesn't, it's not a good outcome or nothing comes of it or it's not productive or I don't know the history.
I think it's productive and it generates a lot of interesting questions, but I think under scrutiny, it falls apart, sort of like quicksand. Mm-hmm. So I don't know that it can, I don't know how much you can actually build on that. How do you build a society on no objectivity? If my truth is just as good as your truth and it's just as real as your truth and it's completely opposite of mine and they're incompatible, then doesn't that just result in war? Or is there a mutual respect or grounds that we could reach? Maybe. It's sort of like a world with no standards.
So there you go. That's a practical, problematic case for going through relativism. I can do this. It's not wrong. It doesn't say it's not wrong. It's my truth. And you can't impose your truth on me. So if I want to do this, if I want to shoot up in the streets, it's fine. You could, I like the way you put that. Standards go out the window. There's no such thing as right and wrong.
Well,
anything goes.
What are the consequences, right. of relativism? And I think it depends on anybody that you ask. But now what we see is this trend, and it's largely global, in that people are returning to traditionalism and religion and belief in objective truth. That may in part be due to how far the media has carried things that a lot of people don't agree with. And so there's kind of like a boomerang effect to that. So the consequence of pushing people, trying to push people off the deep end in terms of relativism, it's happened, right before people have boomeranged back to religion and the idea of objective truth. So it's not working.
Right.
In the media, there's a kind of a boomerang effect is how I would think about it.
Do you believe in free will?
I think we have some choices, but no, I don't think we have complete free will because of instinct.
Well, like, for example, I feel like I have free will all day. I'm constantly making choices for myself. I'm planning the day out. I'm choosing to eat something healthy for myself or something bad for myself, and I get to choose that. I'm choosing how I'm going to spend my money. I'm going to spend my time and all my resources that I have in life. So then that looks like you have free will.
Sort of, but do you choose to be hungry or that you have to eat? I don't think you choose that. So there are some inevitabilities.
So, or do you choose to like the things that you like? Like, I like to use the example. I go to the Italian gelato place and I go and I have all these choices and I have the free will to pick the choice.
Okay.
So I pick pistachio. But then the philosopher comes up and says, "Excuse me, sir, did you get to choose that you like pistachio?"
There you go. See, that goes back to
choose that you wanted that.
That goes back to the evolved. You don't choose your taste buds.
choose your taste buds.
So it's probably a little of both.
So compatibility is what they call. It's kind of like in between the determinism and free will is somewhere in between.
Yeah, you have, there's a range of things you could choose based on your physiology. Like your physiology and your biology don't allow you to choose just anything. And that's also the case for your environment. So not everybody has the ability to say, I'm going to go be a scientist for NASA. They can't just choose that. There's a capacity that's required for that in terms of maybe math and science.
They have the free will to pursue it.
Sure. Right. But they don't have the free will to actually say, yes, I'm going to succeed, and that actually happens.
It's kind of like we're finding out with sports now. Sports, we're realizing with all technology advances and all the sports medicine that it's really just genetics. These guys are good because of genetics, and then they work hard for those genetics. And the people that don't play, there's a commonality between genetics and the way people are wired, their height, bone density. Like Michael Phelps, a perfect example. They said biologically, he was just built with an ideal body to swim. And no one, just his waist to back ratio and everything was like perfect. And no matter how you worked out, some people just are built short and stubby and they cannot win an Olympic gold medal swimming. They're genetically, the body sucks for that. Basketball is an easy example.
Right.
If you're under 6 foot, you're not going to play in the NBA.
Right.
Football, I'm not going to say it, but.
But you have to have both, though.
Yeah.
Right. So Michael Phelps could have genetically the perfect body, but that didn't mean he was ever exposed in his environment.
And there's external and internal. This is all.
Yeah. Environment, the gene environment interaction is what I think that they're finding is the most powerful. So the Williams sisters, Serena and Venus, right? If they were not exposed to tennis, right, they still genetically are amazing for that sport.
Right.
But if they were never exposed to it, they were never exposed to it.
So it doesn't matter how big their genetics were?
Well, would their genetics have led them to play tennis?
I think we all would say no, genetically.
And the environment. So the environment, it's like genetics and the environment acting on genetics. And that kind of, that goes back to a lot of other things around free will. Can you choose to not be poor? Right? I don't think so. What if your environment is such that you come from intergenerational poverty, let's say in the United States, where you presumably have all of these options and all of these choices? Well, what if you're in a disadvantaged single parent home with a mom who is traumatized, is working 3 jobs, you're a delinquent kid, and you have no guidance? Can you really choose to get out of that if there's no environmental factor that introduces you to anything else? So it's never on your radar, ever.
Well, then how do you explain? There's a lot of rags to riches stories. You hear about like Damon John. He's the guy from Fubu. He's on Shark Tank. He was homeless, single mom, and then he ends up owning a multi-billion-dollar company. He made it. So to speak. He made it. He got out of the hood. I don't even think he went to college. Or you hear other stories about people that grew up in the hood. They were in the same environment as everyone else. But they got out and they made it. And the other kids didn't.
Sure.
Is that genetics? Is genetically something in their brain?
No, I don't think so.
Or it's environmental within the family?
Yes. And I think that there are always exceptions, but those are not the general cases. Those are exceptions to the situations.
Wow.
But no, think about how far a secure attachment can carry somebody. So that same single mom with 2 jobs who is attentive to her child and is on the homework and is on everything and is following through with everything, absolutely that kid stands a better chance. That mom can probably only do that if she's aware enough to do that. Why would she be aware enough to do that if somebody did that for her?
Wow.
So it's I think it's an intergenerational process that exceeds just individual choice. There has to be capacity for choice, not just choice alone.
So we're not just environment, just doesn't mean that the country or the neighborhood is literally family environment. Everything goes back to the family.
I think so.
Do you agree with this then? We ought to, instead of investing in all these public programs and things like that, we invest in families, keeping families together. We educate men how to be leaders.
I think that that's a wonderful idea. I don't know how realistic it is, because there are people who gain financially for when the family is fractured, and from welfare states and from government programs staying in place. So
the government doesn't have incentive to keep families together.
I would think not. And I think it depends on the structure of the government.
But
who's paying for what?
Let's take the U.S. and what do you think? I've heard this wild theory that the government is intentionally destroying families for two reasons. One, you just doubled your tax revenue because now you have women working also, and men are still working. And then two, because they're not being raised properly, the media can raise your kids. So the parents aren't raising the kids, the media is. And then what the media does is they try to demasculinize men effectively. So there's no men to fight back the government or fight back the man. So no one's fighting back. They're worried about TikTok videos or watching their favorite TV show or watching Netflix. And testosterone levels are going down for men. And men get addicted to porn, so they don't leave the house. And this is perfect scenario for government. Cool. We're basically manipulating men. They're no longer soldiers who want to fight. They just want to stay inside. So we can do whatever we want now. So we took away our threat. There will be no anarchy or anything in the government. No one cares.
So more control.
This is more control. More money, more control, more power. Let's demasculinize men. Let's double the tax revenue, even though we just keep printing money. It's no point.
I mean, I think it stacks up to what we're saying. I do. I mean, that's obviously not the whole story, but I do think that there is some degree of there's an attempt to weaken the building blocks of our society, which are families. I do think that there's an attempt. I don't know exactly where it's coming from, but there's a very good book, and it is called Unrestricted Warfare. It was written after the Gulf War, I think, by two Chinese soldiers. And they talked about how stronger nations, the U.S. was cited, I believe, stronger nations that had more physical prowess, blow stuff up, things like that, that is not the limit of power. So what weaker nations who have less power, physical power, do is they subvert the countries by infiltrating them and attacking them, their value systems, their media, whatever it is. This is a different type of attack on a country. It's not an explosion or something. It's the country destroying itself through the erosion of its own values or customs or traditions. And then it disintegrates. So it's a very insightful book, because warfare extends well beyond just physical power. And, the U.S. is very concerned with physical power, put all this money into defense.
Right.
Well, what else are you defending apart from the physical attack of the country? What about the media attacks, the attacks on our values and our customs and things like that? Things that can effectively dissolve the family when they're dismantled or manipulated. So those don't seem to be guarded against, probably because of free choice. Free will. We can consume any kind of media, we can consume any videos, anything like that. So there's so much mass information now, and, is it okay to guard or protect, quote unquote, protect against that? If what it's doing is chiseling away at the foundation of a family structure.
Well, do you think dictatorships are better than democracies? To some degree, they have their advantages. Like, you look at the Republic of China compared to the United States.
I would look at Korea compared
Korea.
to North Korea and
North
compared to the United States, and no, I would say there's no. I wouldn't say that. I would view communist dictatorship as the height of, you're the complete loss of freedom. So what is that? That's slavery.
Is that worse than what's happening in the US? Being free and just letting people fuck up the country on their own?
Well, when you say worse, I don't,
Yeah.
you haven't taken away choice at that point. What people do with their choices, right? Should we let people, because they're going to make choices that are going to lead them to obesity in a majority of individuals, should we not let them choose what they should eat? Because the outcome could be worse.
We know
right?
what's better for them, though.
Well, but then we have a ministry of truth. And then we have the idea of playing God at that point. So is that really a power that we want to embolden a human with is the question. I would say no.
Do you believe in God?
I do.
Why?
Well, I think it's the most reasonable choice. I think that statistically speaking, it makes a lot more sense that there is a creator rather than just a random development. God is more a reasonable choice.
So you're saying it's not even a matter of your preference. It's just more in line with reality that there's a God.
That's what I would say. I think the question is, did God create man or human?
Mm-hmm.
Or did human create God? Because they need the concept of a creator.
Mm-hmm.
No.
And isn't needing the concept of creator evidence for a creator?
It might be.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't think that that's unreasonable. Or is it evidence for needing a parental figure
Mm-hmm.
that you didn't have? I don't know.
Think about what if I just told you I don't have a father?
Mm-hmm.
Might just say I don't have a father.
Okay.
You'd be like, "Well, you mean you never met your dad?" Like, no, I don't have a father.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd be so confused. Like, well, you were a sperm cell. You came from a man. Like, no, I didn't. I just showed up. Exactly. Right. So
it's a good example. Yeah. So that's fine. Yeah, that's a reasonable example.
So that's what they're saying about the first human.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he just showed up. He said, "Yo."
Well, he evolved, yeah. So, but why couldn't God create evolution?
Oh, but what did he evolve from?
Right, randomness.
What did random?
Yeah.
It's
so right. So it's more reasonable, I think, to believe in God.
Well, what I'm getting at a certain point, there's an article of faith that's required. Whatever you decide.
Right. That's right.
You have to have faith when you take everything down to the logical conclusion.
Right.
And faith. When I say faith, I don't mean blind faith or no evidence. I mean faith being there's a difference between 100% certainty and the level of certainty that you have. Mm-hmm. That gap is faith.
Right. Believing without actually knowing.
Right. Because I mean, in a lot of scientists, a lot of people, reasonable people or scientists or atheists would say, well, scientists, we don't say we know anything. Right? We say we always leave room for doubt. Like, yeah, this is most likely what could happen. And if you ask them, well, could it be this? Scientists will have to say yes.
But even from the perspective of science, if you're talking about natural sciences, I don't think atheism is even a reasonable premise for anything, because in science, there's evidence for and there's evidence against, or there's no evidence at all.
Uh-huh.
And either way, if you maintain an open position, what you're saying is, we don't really know.
We don't know.
That's agnosticism. That's not atheism. Atheism is a clear belief that no, I do not believe.
It's so
you've claimed a truth in a setting where the science can't effectively say that. So you're not. I think scientists that are atheists are not necessarily even consistent with their own principles around evidence.
Interesting. That's like neuroscientism. It's basically people who, if you can't scientifically prove something, it doesn't exist. I think that's how we prove anything, science, and that's it. And they adhere to those strict guidelines.
I mean, it makes sense, but what about things that have not yet been discovered? So then you go through your life, and then the next generation discovers something that you didn't believe in, and quote unquote proves it. So then you lived your life not believing in that thing yet. Does that hurt or harm you? I don't know. Maybe it depends on what the thing is. But if the thing was God, then maybe it's harmful to you to not believe. Predictors of happiness are really your social relationships and religious affiliation. So there's something to be said for a belief in some established religion, which has a god or gods in general, unless you make the argument that atheism is a religion. In that case, it's a categorical structure that somebody decided to elect as a religion.
I bought it for a while of what the atheist spokespersons, their PR people for atheism, have this concept that atheism is just a lack of belief. I bought into that, but the more I understand religion and atheism, the more I realize atheism is a religion. There's actually denominations of atheism.
I didn't know that. That's amazing.
So, and that's the way I'm starting to see it now.
Oh, okay.
And then you'd say, well, define religion. And you have to define religion and say, well, yeah, that's literally what it sounds like. It falls in that bucket. Have you heard of Pascal's wager?
Yes.
So that's the concept. That kind of sounds like, was that what you were talking about? How, well, you're better off kind of believing in God or adhering to the principles with God than not adhering to, what were you saying about that? Were you saying societies are better off? Society is better off if they follow Christian principles?
No, not necessarily. I don't know that that's the case, but it seems that when you look at, when you say what goes into defining religion is a structure of beliefs that includes principles of morality. And those things are not unrelated to the laws in countries.
Right.
In some countries, they're the same. And we have separation of church-state mandate, but many of our laws are still consistent with the principles of a monotheistic belief system or any religious belief system. A lot of them are the same in terms of their sense of morality. They just get there a different way. So, when you say atheism is a religion, I would want to know what are the tenets and principles of this religion? If you believe in nothing, is that a tenet or principle that tells you right from wrong, or that there's a specific code? Because there's a code for religion, meaning principles, right? That tell us, okay, the structure of the society is this way. Human nature works this way. And then we follow the code. And so if we don't follow the code, what do we have? Do we have Lord of the Flies, where there's just savage behavior all over the place because nobody's following code?
Mm-hmm.
Do we have codes of evolution and, natural selection and survival of the fittest and good luck? What do we have? What do we have in an atheist society where what is the code then? Is it just being a good person? Is it just the golden rule? Well, where does that come from? How do you even know that without a religion? And if you don't have an established religious belief, how do you know that even without God? Where does morality come from without God? Does it come from within you? Because I don't think there's a gene for it.
Moral gene?
Yeah. I don't know. Where does it come from if it doesn't come from somewhere else?
Mm-hmm.
So, I think these are important questions to ask. I don't know that they're ever really going to have an answer, but you can reason that, maybe there's not really a moral gene, and morality just is. Just like there's not a center in your brain for consciousness. Let's turn on your awareness. Or where your thoughts even come from, right? You can't there is no thoughts on an MRI. There's no thoughts on an EEG.
You can't study thoughts.
You can only study thoughts by what people say, right? Or what people write or what they report. So, how does science even explain consciousness or thought? You can't explain consciousness and you're okay with that. Or if you're from scientism and you can't explain consciousness, then can you say that it doesn't exist? I can't explain consciousness, so it doesn't exist. Well, how are you here now? How are you aware? How are you awake?
Neuroscientists will say they don't even like to use the word mind.
Right.
It's brain.
Yeah.
There's a brain. There's no consciousness. Everything is just material. So there is no immaterial. Can't be studied. My thoughts on that are nobody lives our life as though there is no immaterial. Our whole life is more based on philosophy and not science. Everything that we do is just based on the non-material. And you can't even
like values,
just anything. I think the Canetto brother, Clip and Stu, that he use a great example. He talks about, he asked the girl in the crowd, have you ever been on a scientific date? And when you order pasta, and you order your pasta, do you have a scientific kit to check to make sure that the chef didn't throw arsenic in there? No, you have faith, you trust, because, and he goes through the reasons. He's kind of breaking down the free will argument.
Okay.
Like every woman knows and every man knows you cannot make a woman love you. What are the four words the worst words a guy could hear is, let's just be friends. So every guy and every woman knows you can't force love.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't even explain love. We can study its effects scientifically, but we can't explain. When I see someone dying for someone else, that violates Darwinism. Like, we're not supposed to die for someone else. Maybe our own offspring, fine.
So you're saying altruism is not an involved process? There's always a personal interest.
Well, there's no proof that it is. I mean, we can't. If we say it's an involved process, then we just have to say Darwin was wrong.
We could say that.
It was wrong because there's no survival of the fittest through natural selection. Is wrong, actually.
Well,
and then
what if it's to forward the species and not just my family?
Right.
What if I'm going to die for somebody else that is younger than me and has a better chance in life at whatever it is, and they're not part of my family and I don't know that, but they have more time left on the planet, so I'm willing to die for them because they are still part of my group, not my family group, but my species group.
So I would say, are you dying for your whole race as a species? Do you really care about the human race?
No, but maybe
I would say most people don't.
For me,
I think in that scenario, the person dying for the little girl cares about the little girl because they know she has value. There's something else to her other than just flesh and bones.
Right.
I don't think anyone cares about the human race as a whole. Like, let's advance this bitch. It's like, I go up to any American on the street and say, hey, last year, did you give away $10 to Africa to feed a kid? No one care. We don't care. We know all this suffering is happening, but we're spending money on Netflix and nicer cars and food. Like, when it comes down to it, humans don't care about the human race as a whole.
They're motivated by self-interest.
They say they do, but their life does not reflect that at all.
Okay.
They care about themselves. What's best for me? Yeah. That's what we see. I mean, that's what I see. That when I look around, that's what I see. I don't see anyone doing anything for anyone else.
I mean, there are certain groups that do. I mean, there's charitable organizations, there's volunteering, there's all kinds of people giving away their time, but then you can go back to, well, it makes them feel good.
Makes them feel good.
Yeah. So.
Or as people that don't understand Christianity or God's word, they'll say, we're just trying to get into heaven. So you're doing good works to get points.
Yeah. So maybe everybody is motivated by just self-interest. So then saving that little girl, what value is that?
Right.
But somebody would do it.
Why?
Well, maybe Darwin can't explain that. Not well.
And if we say, well, it's just part of the evolutionary process, that's like a God of the gaps argument. That's the evolution of the gaps argument. Just like, well, we can't explain it, so evolution. What do you think about dinosaurs?
You mean like Jurassic Park?
Yeah.
Great movies.
No, actual dinosaur. Are they even a real thing? Was there dinosaurs? You heard about the fossil conspiracy?
No, tell me about it.
No, I just made it up then. Yeah, I mean, was there even dinosaurs? Is that even a real thing? we find all these fossils. There's 65 million years. 65 million years ago, there was dinosaurs. That's the narrative. Humans and dinosaurs never coexisted on the planet together. And there was some type of catastrophic global event that just wiped away dinosaurs, not other things, just the dinosaurs. And other things kept living on.
Were you telling me about a pastor
Yeah,
just trying to put this all together?
there's a guy specializing in this, forget his name, some Canadian apologist.
Okay.
But he talks about anyone interested in dinosaurs and in evolution. So his take is the world's like 6,000, 7,000 years old. Whereas, Darwinians, they'll say 13.6 billion years.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's because he believes the accounts in the Bible is a true historical narrative, and this is what happened, this is the way it happens, and we can break down the timeline. And then when we look at science is consistent with the Bible. His whole life is based on studying that and researching that. It's interesting though, because it's always made the argument like, don't have blind faith in Christianity, like look into it and you'll see that God's not real. It's like, well, do that with everything, right? When they tell you we had tails or we were monkeys or donkeys or fish and we just evolved into humans, well, look into it, kind of do some research. And I kind of got into that and I was like, let me look into this because it's the same narrative, the same people who controls science is atheists. It's an atheistic worldview. That whole science is. So I was like, okay, that's already a little biased, right? I mean, it's one whole worldview controls truth, and yet they claim that theists are the arbiters. We say we're the arbiters of truth. We know what's truth and morally correct, but then atheists say, well, we know what's factual. It's pretty interesting. They're doing the same thing we are, but then they're blaming us for doing it, and they don't realize they're doing the exact same thing.
Right, it's on the same underlying principle. I don't know that all scientists are atheists, but
it was like 7% or not. The last time I checked, I might have made that up just now. Who knows?
That would be an interesting study. That,
like you've heard of Stephen Myers?
Yes,
he has a Discovery Institute. So what do you think about ID, intelligent design? And most people, again, they're atheistic scientists, will call that pseudoscience. It's not real science. But then proponents of ID say, well, it's good science. There could be a God, so we let the science just lead us to where it takes us. We don't eliminate something in advance.
Yeah, I would say that would be real science. That's how I think it's meant to be. It's not meant to be controlled. Science is about discovery. It's not about, well, to some degree, it's about manipulation if you're looking at intervention and testing things. But when you're talking about things to be discovered in the universe and things that are metaphysical, there is no manipulation. You can't try, there's nothing to manipulate. You just have to wait and see, can you put God in a box? Because essentially that's what you would be doing with the scientific method. Doesn't go through this step process, then it's not real and we don't have sufficient evidence for it. Okay, you don't have sufficient evidence for it, but that doesn't mean it's not real. It just means you don't have sufficient evidence for it yet, right now. So the problem with that approach is that it elevates human above the metaphysical, which I think is a mistake.
Let's go eat.
Okay.
Awesome. Thanks for watching. If you want to see more free content like this, just drop a comment in the comment section below and subscribe. It's absolutely free. Go ahead. All right. Thanks for Sit down. Go fly.